All right. Okay. Let's see. Start it up. All right. Welcome back, chat. What's up, Sunrail? Um, yeah, back in for another week. We have a good week ahead of us. I'm not gonna lie, this was actually a pretty good week. We've had Heart expand, which is nice. Caltrain is getting paid with the actual regenerative braking that's going back into the system, so that's pretty good. There's a little bit of some nice financial aspects going on there, which is kind of rare to see with all these transportation companies struggling a little bit. But we also had what else do we have? Oh yeah, the MTA. You remember if you guys remember that project I talked about on this channel? It was the like the viaduct replacement in Harlem. That's actually like most of that work is now being done or been completed. So that's also nice. They announced that. So there's a lot of good stuff. And I don't want to overshadow the good stuff with some of the bad stuff. There's a lot of obviously bad stuff, but what's new with that? There's always some bad stuff going on with transit now, but there's a lot of good stuff going on too. So that's what we're gonna focus on in this and during the stream. The first one we have is so far the first story we have is Atlanta. Atlanta is trying to figure out a way to deal with traffic congestion, and one of the ways that they have decided to deal with traffic congestion is MARTA, which is kind of obvious, like that's kind of what we've been kind of saying for a minute now is to start investing in MARTA some more. But hopefully, I don't know what's really going on with there. Even talking with the city and talking with talking with talking with MARTA themselves, seems like there's a lot of confusion about transportation in Atlanta. Again, there's a lack of a hierarchy in Atlanta when it comes to public transportation, and that's due to the funding sources. The funding sources mainly coming from the counties and not actually coming from the state. So there's a bit of confusion about who really has control over where transportation is supposed to be going. So, with that being said, let's get into this first story.
Live at 5, we all deal with Atlanta's traffic. I'm sure at times it's made you miss appointments or even be late to work, and it could potentially get even worse.
Nearly 2 million more people are expected to move into the metro in the next 25 years. At the same time, public buses and trains are seeing fewer people getting on board. Atlanta News First senior reporter Patrick Quinn spent months digging into transit struggles and possible solutions.
How do you get to work? For Morgan Vaughn, it's complicated.
It took us a lot of looking to find a place, this close to MARTA.
Morgan and her boyfriend just moved to Midtown. She walks 15 minutes to catch a train, then takes the train 20 minutes north to work. From her seat, the advantages of public transit are obvious.
Especially when you go past, if you're on the highway, and you look at all the cars going slower than you.
But here's the catch. Morgan only rides MARTA to work on weekdays. To get to work on weekends, she tried for over a year, but couldn't trust it. A 45-minute commute too often ballooned to 2 hours each way.
The trains were mislabeled, the transfer, the extra time, like it all starts to compound on each other and it just becomes unmanageable.
So now on weekends,
And that goes a lot back to the fact that we were talking about, I think it was last week, when it came to ghost buses. So MARTA's, sometimes transit systems will have scheduled buses or trains to show up and then they just don't show up at all, which is really frustrating when your idea of like, hey, I want to go to a place requires that specific vehicle to be showing up. The reason why people don't use public transit or start to pull away from using public transit and go back to using cars or whatever is because public transit needs to be public transit needs to be usable, but usable in the way of like it needs to be reliable, right? People need to be able to rely on using public transit. And so because people can't rely on the public transit showing up every now, like when it's supposed to show up, then, you know, people are just not going to take it. And so that's the frustrating part when it comes to public transit. And that's why people end up driving instead. So I'm hoping that, you know, MARTA figures this out. I know a lot of it really comes down to funding and not really understanding like, or pulling funding from certain lines. And so then certain lines just don't operate the way they're supposed to. And I know MARTA is doing a lot of work on the weekends when it comes to fixing their infrastructure, specifically around their metro system. But, you know, unfortunately, you know, like that work, if it impacts the riders to the point where your, you know, hour long trip turns into 2 hours, then that's just unacceptable. When it comes to, all right, Brinksville News, when it comes to, yeah, so I think, yeah, Summer, I think when it comes to like suburban routes and then more used routes, so I think there's in my eyes, right, there is a point in time where, you know, you have suburban routes that are really not used as much. And I think in a perfect system, all the routes should be circulating all times of the week. You know what I'm saying? Maybe not less at nights, obviously, but like there's certain times and time frames of when you have more frequent service. But I do think that like for suburban routes where, you know, the transit is going to be less used in some cases, there's a point in time where it's like, especially when it comes to weekends, there's a point in that weekend where it's like I feel like if a transit agency is truly struggling to operate, then they should cut those suburban routes that aren't really getting enough ridership during the weekends, you know, and move to a more streamlined option. And even though that sucks, because that's literally the same thing I was just talking about with the bus redesigns that happen. Some cities can do it, some cities shouldn't. Like again, like if you're Akron, Ohio, right, and you're like in this sprawled out area with this, you know, limited taxpayer base, it's like I understand having a bus redesign. If you're in New York City, having a bus redesign doesn't make that much sense because there's so much density that what you're really trying to do, or what you really should be doing, is building more subways or more rail transportation. Atlanta is kind of like halfway. They're like in the middle of that, where it's like, it's not that there isn't a lot of density. There's a decent amount of density, but it is a lot of suburban sprawl and stuff like that. But the city is positioned in a way, and it has been positioned in a way for over a century, where it's like it's a rail hub. It's essentially a rail hub, and you know, it has really good bones. Like the MARTA system is really good. It's good bones, but of course it needs some type of extra way to circulate around without going directly through the city center, which is one of the issues that I think that this writer is dealing with, is because when you have to transfer at 5 Point Station, or keep on transferring, literally at 5 Point Station was the only place you can really transfer, then it ends up creating some issues where your trip becomes a lot longer. The only time I remember, I guess I was staying up near like Buckhead or whatever, and then I had family like near Decatur. And so it's like the way that I had to, like I basically had to take two lines, right? But then that line, or my trip, became so much longer than just driving, because there isn't a way to go from outskirt of Atlanta to outskirt of Atlanta. So now you have to go literally directly into the city, and then from directly into the city, come back out again. And so that's like, obviously, like, especially if you're talking about the weekends and stuff like that, and weekend travel is a little bit better in Atlanta. You know, there's still like, if there's game day or whatever, then there's a lot more traffic, but it's a lot better than traveling during rush hour. And so, weekend traffic, some people are just going to, bite the bullet and drive, which it doesn't help, right? Because then you end up adding to that traffic. But, I think specifically when it comes to like rush hour travel in Atlanta, it's just like the highways are unusable. But, there's no way that they can keep on adding more lanes and doing this. Like if you look at the highways in Atlanta right now, it's insane. So it's like they do need to invest more into MARTA. And again, like, yeah, exactly like you said, like there isn't the suburban counties don't want MARTA expansion, and they're not trying to actually fund that expansion. They're not trying to fund MARTA, which is the main issue.
She borrows her boyfriend's car, and while on weekdays she zips past the car traffic, on weekends she adds to it.
You do need it to be reliable. If you can't rely on it, nobody's going to take it.
Public transportation only works if the public can trust it. If a train or bus does not show up consistently, people will stop riding. And in fact, they already have. In 2020,
And that's the issue. When a train or bus stops showing up, people will stop riding. If they have the choice to stop riding it, and they have a choice to go back into the car, they'll make that choice to go back into the car if it's not reliable. And for people who need it and don't have that choice, if it's not reliable, then guess what happens? Then they stop paying for it. So it's like you end up going into this death spiral where people who have the choice to leave will just leave, and people who need to stay there will just stop paying. You need to justify your costs. And, I think this shows you, like, even if just looking at this chart, even though MARTA's ridership is going back up since COVID, it hasn't been raising the same amount as other transit agencies in the U.S. And the reason because of that is just because they basically compounded all of the issues with every transit agency in the U.S. It's just like your service frequency is good during some times, but then other times, right, on the weekends, it gets all wonky. And then when it gets all wonky on the weekends, then it's like wonky to the point where it's unusable, And because it's unusable, right, and then you have buses that don't show up, right? I recently seen a story where it was like this bus operator, I didn't watch it. I just saw it on my feed, but like a bus operator like passed up a disabled person because they were disabled. Like doing stuff like that is not going to help you in the long run. That's not going to help you in the long run. This is what keeps this type of plateauing ridership. So it's just unfortunate.
Before the pandemic, MARTA welcomed 2.1 million riders on buses and trains every week. Now, they register just 1.2 million weekly rides, a 45% drop in just 5 years. All while Atlanta has grown by more than 250,000 people. This ridership drop impacts everyone in the city, whether you yourself ride MARTA or not. For fewer people on transit equals more cars on the road. The obvious and overwhelming issue, many former riders are now working more from home. Like Mike and Jeff, both regular riders pre-pandemic, they now tell me they cut back.
If you were at like 3-ish days a week, or maybe 4 even on some weeks, what are you at now?
0.
As reliability has taken a hit, I actually find in some cases that driving is a little more reliable.
But other cities are having more success post-pandemic.
We looked at public transportation ridership for 3 southern cities, Atlanta, Dallas, and Miami. Atlanta's in blue. You see all 3 plummet right at the start of the pandemic. And the other 2 cities, they start to incrementally increase. Atlanta is much slower to rise, to the point where 2023, 2024, and to 2025, Atlanta's ridership 45% of what it was pre-pandemic.
Outside of the pandemic.
And
45%.
And like a lot of this, when you look at this transit map, right, or like look at the transit ridership map, it's because there is a shift. There's a fundamental difference between how each city has approached public transportation post-pandemic. So, with Miami and Dallas, they've actually been focusing a lot on expanding their public transportation and expanding public transit options. while Atlanta hasn't really been doing that much. You know, Atlanta has a BRT project. Again, we've covered the Beltline corridor plenty of times, and that's, you know, been going through what it's been going through, and it hasn't really been moving as much. And so because of Atlanta's stagnant type of investment into, or meaningful investment, because they have invested into the 5 Point station, but because of their lack of meaningful investment into public transportation, they're down here, you know, while Miami-Dade, which, you know, has, I think, not only because of, you know, like having like Tri-Rail expand into, like, there's a lot of when public transportation is in the news for positive reasons in the media a lot, then it ends up influencing the public to try it out more. And when people try it out and they see like, okay, this is really useful, then they start taking it more. And so that's kind of like what's going on here. You know, that's one of the positives of Tri-Rail and Brightline, and what they're doing is because they're actually positively influencing the idea of taking public transportation in Southern Florida. Dallas has been working on the Silver Line this entire time, and has been constantly in the news for positive reasons. It hasn't been like a oh, this project sucks and all this type of stuff. It's actually been pretty good media about it, and then it ends up trickling to other routes as well. So, you know, when you have that mentality of like, hey, like, we need to show the public that public transportation is really useful, then it's good. Yeah, it's good, because then people can eventually, like, it actually just trickles down in the mindset of people. Like, hey, like, all right, well, I want to use public transportation more. So that's nice.
Of what it was pre-pandemic.
Outside of the pandemic, the second external factor continually impacting ridership is, as Metro Atlanta has grown, MARTA has not grown with it. Cobb County historically rejected MARTA expansion, and in 2019, Gwinnett County also said no. So major cities like Marietta, Peachtree Corners, no MARTA. The state's largest public school district, Gwinnett County, no MARTA. Major entertainment hubs, Six Flags, or going to a Braves game, you cannot take a train. For many riders, they can't reach MARTA, and MARTA can't reach them.
It's not like you can go anywhere in Atlanta on the MARTA. It's pretty limited.
Meaning buses and trains don't go where people need to go. Marcy Williams-Pudalov calls them dead zones.
There's little dead zones all around the city, and you don't even realize until you have to go to those places.
From talking with many riders, and I talked with many riders, MARTA is not providing a fantastic experience every day. For Ashley Powell, it was a lack of reliability. Her bus to take her 8-month-old Cadence to daycare was constantly late.
I even asked.
I think there's a part where, like, part of it when it comes to, like, let's say like this map he showed, right? And he showed like the areas where there is where's it at? Right? So he showed like the areas where there's like events and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like large not events, but like, you know, large attractions and stuff like that. Showing these areas, and none of them are located in a spot that is near good public transportation. And so a part of public transportation is not just the fact that, like, transporting people to places, but it also helps when those places are closer to the public transportation itself. So you don't always have to build public transportation to go out to those places. Sometimes you just need to locate those places closer to public transportation. And so hopefully, you know, if they can't have public transportation go to these places because these counties, you know, are, you know, just opposed to it, then it's probably better to make Fulton County and make DeKalb County, make these counties more attractive to these places so that they can actually move. So there's two ways of looking at it. You don't always have to expand public transportation to get to other places. If you make those places that those desirable places that people want to go to closer to public transportation, then it's essentially doing the same thing for cheaper.
was constantly late.
I even asked the driver, like, what happened? I've been sitting out here waiting for 2 hours for you, you know? And they're the ones who are just like, oh, that's MARTA. And I'm like, y'all got to do better.
For Howard Matthews, the trains keep getting stuck, causing slowdowns.
There's always, almost every day when I get on MARTA, there's a situation that happens. I was coming from Dunwoody to 5 Points today, and the train was stuck.
For Micaiah Witherspoon, who takes the train to school, she doesn't always feel safe.
Like older men will try to like come to approach me and things, and like it's really uncomfortable. You don't really feel safe, and like we know MARTA police is out there, but they're not really on site out there.
But we did more digging. Another factor for the ridership drop, Atlanta businesses are not as invested in subsidizing their employees' breeze passes, the cards used to access MARTA. In 2020, businesses invested $15 million in the MARTA's Employer Partnership Program. It's now half that.
Yeah, that's a really big issue. So and I think I talked about this, I might have talked about this, but so, you know, like employers, right, like businesses and stuff like that will buy cards for their employees, which is really useful because they're basically making it so that their employees don't have to pay to get to work, which is one of the things I've always talked about, which is kind of weird, is that you're paying to work for a multi-million-dollar company. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. So it does help when the company is actually subsidizing you to go to work for them by buying the cards for them. But it's also, and it's also useful for the transit agency because the transit agency gets that extra funding from those companies. So because those companies are buying the cards, they get that extra funding. Now, the problem is when those employees are not taking MARTA because it isn't reliable, right? Then those companies won't buy the cards for their employees, which means that MARTA is actually not just losing money from the ridership being down, but losing money from those companies just not investing in MARTA because, well, MARTA isn't reliable. So it's literally MARTA entering a death spiral and just spending money on like the 5 Point station redesign and doing all this type of stuff. It's like, all right, but like there's way more pressing matters at hand, you know? Especially like, again, like I said, like the Beltline is a really good project. If they would invest in it and actually, you know, do something about that, then that would be really beneficial for the entire system. Because then it will bring back that the same thing that we see in Miami and the same thing that we see in Dallas. It will bring back that positive notion that like, hey, Atlanta actually cares about public transportation. Right now, that's not visible. I mean, yes, they got new train cars and stuff like that. So when those are riding down the tracks, then I think people are going to care about it a lot more. But well, not a lot more, but maybe a little bit more. But what people really want to see is just reliability, and they want to see expansion. So,
partnership program. It's now half that. Those are some of the issues. Here's the urgency. The time to get more people riding public transportation in Atlanta is now. With 1.8 million people, the population of Indianapolis projected to move into Metro Atlanta in the next 30 years, Atlanta and Atlantans need more of MARTA.
So that's a look at the issues. What are the answers? There's a lot. So much so that we could not fit them into a TV story. So we've decided let's have a town hall instead. Tomorrow night, Atlanta News First is hosting the Future of Transit in Atlanta Town Hall, and you're invited. There are just a handful of seats still available. It is a free event, but grab your phone, click the QR code on your screen to secure your seat. Again,
I mean, he killed this. This is actually probably one of the best, you know, news media pieces I've seen of public transportation. Because, like, honestly, typically they get a lot of information wrong. But like, this is actually like really good, like surprisingly good. So, you know, shout out to him. It's also good that they're getting the community together to actually talk about it, which is kind of like the main focus, because obviously the main people funding the public transportation is the community. So it'd be probably really good to get the community together to talk about it, which I feel like Atlanta sometimes struggles with. But yeah, do I think that if MARTA is somehow extended to the edge of the counties or attractions, that yeah, oh yeah, definitely, it would definitely move the needle, because if they one expansions and stuff, expansions help people. Well, expansions when you do it properly, right? You're not like completely cost overrunning and being delayed by like a whole decade. Those are actually really, really like, it creates a lot of positive momentum for public transit when it's done properly, and it has been done properly. I don't like that. Well, in the media, right, we see a lot of like bad public transit projects that have cost overruns, or they have like or they're like extremely delayed. But the reality of it is, not every project is like that in the U.S. A lot of projects actually get completed under budget, but they just don't really talk about them that much. But when projects like that happen, for the community at least, it creates a lot of positive momentum, so that the next time when the public transit agency is like, hey, I want to do another expansion, can I get some more funding? Then they're more willing to do it. So I think that with MARTA, right, even if there were some cost overruns a little bit, right, and like a little bit of delay, then that's it still would create like that positive momentum for Atlanta, where they're like, all right, we're back to building public transit again. I think that was one of the main focuses about the Beltline. The Atlanta Beltline was supposed to be that type of like, okay, this is some momentum, so let's start expanding the system some more. But I don't know. It's still yet to see what happens here.
The second segment.
Oh, a second.
Live it.
All right. So the next story we're going to talk about is actually an expansion. So obviously, which is actually the face of this, or the thumbnail of my live stream is the Honolulu skyline. And so HART recently opened phase 2 of the skyline, which goes now to the airport, which is a large employment center. So that's really good. And so we have that open now. So, I think, this is some really good news. Like finally, I've seen a lot of bad stuff about the skyline. When it first opened, like phase 1 was literally, even if you look on Google Maps, phase 1 is literally located in a bunch of farm fields. I understand why it can really look like, hey, like you guys really built this in the middle of nowhere, when the reality of it is all this land is going to be developed into housing. But, and ridership was really, really bad because they kind of over-predicted what their ridership would be. Of course, they over-predicted what their ridership would be when they're literally building in farm fields and the land around the train stations didn't get developed. So there's a lot of problems with the Skyline's first phase, but I think that with this second phase, they're really cooking because, having an airport it's not the terminus, but, it's having the airport be one of the stops is going to be really useful, especially for people who aren't staying directly in downtown or staying a little bit away from downtown, or for people who are actual employees of the airport. So let's get into the story.
Second segment of Skyline Rail will open a week from today with what officials say will be more convenience and efficiency. Our Daryl Huff shows us how first-time long-distance commuters could get to work and home faster.
It only adds a little more than 5 miles and 4 stations to the Skyline Guideway, but city officials have high hopes for what the second segment will bring to the project.
For me, this is really the ultimate in providing quality of life opportunities, economically, time-wise. It's just going to lend a whole different dynamic.
As you leave the old endpoint at the stadium station, that is, the main connector to Pearl Harbor is only a few minutes away. Then it's a slow-motion roller coaster ride over the freeway and into the airport stop, which the city urges potential travelers to check out in advance on the free ride weekend.
Check out that airport station. Figure out how it connects to the airlines that you use, so that when you have a whole bunch of suitcases and kids in tow, you know exactly how to get to and from the station.
The segment will be available to fare-paying riders with Holo cards on Thursday the 16th and Friday the 17th. The free ride days are Saturday and Sunday the 18th and 19th. the hours from 4 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. are expanding to account for worker and airline flight schedules. They expect commuters will use the free weekend to decide if rail can now work for them.
This is a great opportunity for our residents to hop on Skyline and actually do some pre-navigation of the system.
We haven't talked much about this station, Ahua at Lagoon Drive, but it could be a major hub for commuters because here the city says they'll be able to catch Zoom routes, bus routes that will take them quickly to the university and downtown. And that could be a game changer.
The U line to UH and the A line to downtown will go through Mapunapuna to the freeway. Those in another limited stop route to Waikiki promise a ride from Kapolei to those key destinations.
All right, so this map is a little bit confusing, but so the station, right? The Skyline station is right here for now. This is where it ends. Of course, the rest of the Skyline goes out further out. You can't even see where it's at. All right, so the Skyline station is actually directly underneath Chat, right? And then this is right here. These are like bus routes or whatever. And so, again, they're trying to incorporate the Skyline into actual, the actual transportation network, which I can see, this being, it's positive. That's good. That's what they should be doing. But again, not being in downtown or being around the actual attractions, is still going to hurt them a little bit when it comes to the final opening date. So it's still going to hurt them when it comes to transporting tourists, which is kind of one of the largest things that they should be focusing on, right? Because a lot of people who are going to be visiting Honolulu aren't going to be having cars and stuff like that immediately. Yes, there'll be rental services and stuff like that. But, transporting people into the downtown is probably a lot more useful than transporting people out to the suburbs and stuff like that, or to the farm fields. So there is still a little bit of a, shaky point in there. But, I don't think a lot of people are really going to be taking their bus, taking the bus with their suitcases and stuff like that. It's just not an attractive option, it's not as an attractive option as taking a train, especially an automated train, So Honolulu has streetcars, and they got replaced by buses. Yeah. So, I think just like a lot of American cities, they're trying to rebuild back their transportation network and influence people into taking public transit again. Unfortunately, a lot of the TOD that I'm seeing, if there is any TOD in Honolulu, a lot of it is very car oriented. Still, it's weird. You'll still see these massive surface parking lots. So it's just I feel like they have the right idea when it comes to building the public transportation, but have the wrong plan when it comes to actually developing the land around that public transportation, which is both go hand in hand. So that's been the main issue that I've been seeing with Honolulu, and it's not going to help their ridership in the long run. Especially, it's just the fact that they built an automated train. Right, they built an automated train that can serve really high frequencies. They have platform screen doors, a lot of really good stuff going into the system. And then the land development around the stations is just horrible. So, hopefully that gets better.
In about an hour.
In an hour. Yeah, it's that certainty. That's what this is really good.
That is our hope. And with these rapid buses, this A line, U line, and W line we're putting in, we really want to prioritize speed, efficiency, and frequency.
The mayor points out that even if that commute might not be shorter than average, it will be more predictable, especially going home at night.
Because anybody that's living out here on the west side has resigned themselves to the challenges of what H1 represents, and that is you never know how long it's going to take.
Instructions on combined rail and bus routes are already posted on the bus website.
Yeah. So, Hart could have possibly used the farm fields to do a J. Yeah. So exactly. I think this is sort of what the government does when it comes to real estate development. Again, remember the government makes most of their money on property taxes, right? So when you have those farm fields and stuff like that, and you build public transit like this to go to those farm fields, and then you rezone the areas, you're going to hope that, like, hey, we're going to get a lot of money from these property taxes. And unfortunately, the development around the train stations have been still very car focused. They've been very car oriented. So it's like, again, like we have massive surface parking lots outside of these apartment complexes, and this infrastructure, it's like it's a bunch of stroads, and these stroads have sidewalks and stuff like that, but they're still very car oriented. It's like those sidewalks, how many people are really going to be walking to go to the train station? And all the train stations on Hart systems in these newly developed areas, a lot of these train stations have large surface parking lots as well. So you have to then walk across those large surface parking lots and then go to the train station as well. So not only are you walking on this stroad, this very car focused infrastructure, but then you also have to walk through a massive surface parking lot just to get to your train. And then altogether, it just ends up not being the best system. So there's still a lot of the system. The bones are there again, similar to MARTA. The bones are there. They're just going to need to actually put in some meaningful TOD around the stations themselves.
It's out that even if that commute might not be shorter than
All right.
average.
So the next station, the next video we have, or next news report we have, is Caltrain. Caltrain's been pretty quiet since their electrification. Other than ridership being up, Caltrain's just been doing their thing. And so Caltrain's back in here with some more good news. And so yeah, let's see it.
There's a new benefit to Caltrain's all-electric fleet. Those trains running up and down the peninsula are now doing just more than carrying passengers. Brad Hamilton is live in San Jose with the Caltrain, how it's giving back to the grid. Hey, Brad.
Good evening, Ryan. Yes, over the past year, Caltrain's electric fleet has been really, with each stop, they've been saving energy and giving it back to the South Bay area community. But now, for the first time, all of that stopping and saving is finally paying off. On the surface, it looks like just another train. But inside each of Caltrain's 37 electric trains, something revolutionary is happening. When these trains slow down, they don't just brake. They breathe energy back into the grid. And starting today, Caltrain will start getting paid for the power it sends back.
We are here to celebrate an amazing partnership that will support both transit and clean energy in our community.
The technology behind it is called regenerative braking. Each time a train slows down, about 23% of that energy is fed right back into the system. The past year, that power went back into the grid for free. State Assembly member Diane Pappin, who represents District 21, pushed to change that.
Caltrain was sending clean, renewable energy back to the grid, but it wasn't getting credit for it. If this were a rooftop solar situation, we would certainly be getting the credit for what we sent back to the grid.
Her bill to make that law statewide didn't pass, but Caltrain negotiated its own deal, a first of its kind in California.
I'm actually interested in what bill she had for like a statewide regenerative braking type of bill or whatever. Seeing that, Caltrain is the only electrified mainline rail line in California that's, heavily used. Other than, unless she's talking about like, like BART or like, you know, light rail systems, or even, you know, like the metro or something like that. I don't know. I don't know if even if her bill would have been that useful. I think it's just ahead of its time in that case. But even still, this is really good for public transit when it comes to or for Caltrain, for public transit in general, but for Caltrain, because that means if this is a little bit of an extra funding source, and this is a funding source that Caltrain doesn't have to fight over with other transit agencies. So in California, Caltrain typically fights over funding, other than the funding that they're getting from the counties and stuff like that. They still have to fight over state funding, which is really unfortunate. And this is a way to make sure that they're not fighting over this little bit of funding. So this little cushion is going to be really useful. And, you know, I just hope it gets used wisely again.
Sent back to the grid.
Her bill to make that law statewide didn't pass, but Caltrain negotiated its own deal, a first of its kind in California. Those agreements came through partnerships with Peninsula Clean Energy and San Jose Clean Energy, the agencies that power the train system.
Our partnership is delivering exactly what the public expects: cleaner air, smarter policy, and a stronger local grid.
From diesel smoke to silent.
That's actually a good question. I'm not sure how much they're spending on electricity themselves, but, you know, getting any money back is going to be really useful. So hopefully, you know, and hopefully this actually pressures a lot more of the transit agencies around the Bay Area to think about electrifying themselves, specifically Ace Rail. You know, if Ace Rail could electrify, that would be really useful. So I think that, you know, any way to actually get more of these public transportation agencies to take electrification seriously, it's just, you know, it's a W. So I'll take it.
Speed, Caltrain says the move to electric cuts about 250,000 metric tons of greenhouse gas every year. That's the equivalent of taking 55,000 cars off the road. And now, every break, every stop helps power something else. San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan calls it the kind of local innovation that could reshape public transit statewide.
This is a smart, practical climate action. And it shouldn't stop here. We need this approach statewide so that every community can make transit cleaner and more self-sustaining.
So the next time that you hear those brakes, that sound just might be the future powering the Bay.
Yeah, and again, Caltrain officials believe that because of these changes, they're going to actually save millions of dollars in energy costs each year. And every official that spoke at this thing said the same thing. This is not just an example for the air.
Okay, so the money is in the millions, which, you know, I mean, hey, listen, a lot of these transit agencies in the U.S. have been scrapping over millions. So, you know, the fact that this stuff passed so that they can actually, for Caltrain at least, they can actually get some of that money back is extremely useful. All right, we're going to head over to the east. We're going to head over to Long Island in Connecticut. Surprisingly, so let's go over there.
And plans for a 14-mile bridge connecting Bridgeport to Long Island are generating new interest tonight. Our Frank Recchia tells us why.
I'm thinking about connecting our beautiful state with Long Island.
When Connecticut developer Steve Shapiro looks out on Long Island Sound, he doesn't see Bridgeport on one side.
This man is horrifying me. Why is every single time he's on screen, it's a low angle? Like, I'm gonna let him cook.
Long Island on the other, and a vast expanse between them. What he sees is a 14-mile bridge, like a set of two-way doors.
Dang, look at this. Oh man, this would be. Can you imagine if something like this gets built? That would be crazy.
Linking both shores.
It would cut down severely on travel time between Long Island and Connecticut, making the trip 3 hours down to 20 minutes.
He's reviving a plan that's been debated for the better part of a century. A plan designed to dramatically.
Yeah, I think that's an AI bridge. But could you imagine though? A bridge this big would need to be built between the two things though. I don't think he look at. But yeah, no. Imagine a bridge going between the Long Island Sound or across the Long Island Sound. Like, that's just the space between a bridge. Like, I think a lot of projects I've seen have been tunnels. But a bridge is kind of crazy. This bridge doesn't make that much sense, obviously, because, you know, why is there a... Yeah, let's roast the bridge a little bit. So this support column right here doesn't really make that much sense, obviously. Right here gets a little bit spaghetti. This is not connected. Right here, there's a little bit of support right here. Everything about this bridge is a little bit wonky. But, you know, he has the vision, right? And I'm going to let him aura farm, okay? I'm going to let him aura farm.
It would cut down severely on...
Look, low angle again. Low angle. Look how he's walking. Hands clutched up. Oh, yeah. He means business.
Travel time between Long Island and Connecticut, making the trip 3 hours down to 20 minutes.
He's reviving a plan that's been debated for the better part of a century. A plan designed to dramatically reduce traffic.
95 from Bridgeport to Stamford was ranked the most congested highway in the United States.
And then why did we get this extreme close-up?
When people are on the road in traffic and not at a job producing, that
Why are you standing so far away from him?
Your GDP.
He says the bridge would cost about $50 billion and should be paid for by the federal government.
If the government could come up with the money, get paid back with the toll.
Let me see that map
by
again.
The federal.
What? Wait, why would they? I'm a little bit confused on why they would build the bridge this way. This seems like it's very like, why not build the bridge here? Or build the bridge here. Like, this feels like very why is this a story? Why is this a story? Why is this a story? Because at this point, if you're gonna build it like this, then it might as well be a tunnel, because this is going to be a very, very expensive bridge. Why not build it between the two shortest points? All right, whatever.
Federal government.
If the government could come up with the money, get paid back with the tolls, not cost the taxpayers of Connecticut or Long Island any money, I think it's a huge win for everybody.
What? See, this is like the dream infrastructure project. An infrastructure project that is huge, it's massive, very important to the economy, right? And it doesn't cost anybody money. It doesn't. It's all free. The federal government, that money doesn't come out of anywhere, right? It's not like we all pay federal taxes. That money doesn't come out of anybody's pockets. It just gets built. It just happens. Oh my God.
It's not just about, building infrastructure. It's about building for our future.
He says the bridge would connect I-95 in Bridgeport to the Sunken Meadow State Parkway on Long Island. While some express environmental and noise concerns, Steve says a train deck on the bridge would help the environment.
See, I didn't see a train deck on the original AI. We didn't see that train deck on the original AI rendering. But what do we think about it now, chat? Is train deck now? Is it approved? He said he's gonna put a train deck because of and again, what is? I wish I could see the entire thing right here, but this isn't railroads. I don't even understand where it's going to connect at, because the trains it's so faded, but the train line, right? The Northeast Corridor is here. This is the Northeast Corridor up here. I'm not even sure if there is a line to connect to the Northeast Corridor anywhere, unless the trains would have came off the bridge this way and then turned onto the Northeast Corridor and then met at Stratford, skipping Bridgeport. Why am I analyzing this so hard? Yeah, double trains, no cars, right?
Something everyone could afford, taking a train, cuts down on our traffic, cuts down on our pollution. It's a green form of transportation, and it's very, very key.
He says the projected CO2 reduction, like taking more than 250,000 cars off the road. In a place where monuments watch over the splendor of Long Island Sound, this developer has a monumental vision, a plan he says neither side of the Sound would regret because the bridge would be a sure bet. His vision of a glittering gateway to the future.
In the state that begins with the word connect, in the city that begins with the word bridge, wouldn't it be amazing if this 14-mile span could be a connector of the people?
This dude, all right, rate his aura, chat. Rate his aura 1 out of 10 because I don't know. He kind of cooked with that last line, and then they showed this horrible AI squiggly line bridge, but he did cook. He did cook. Okay, seen a lot of zeros. El Aura, okay. 4, okay. Okay, he gave him a 4. All right, he gave him a 10. Give him a 10. There goes 110. All right, so we're averaging about a 3 right now. Okay. All right, the next story, we have SEPTA. So we're going over to SEPTA. It's kind of story isn't great. If you guys know what's going on with SEPTA right now, SEPTA is, let me load it up real quick.
Working to address and plans for 14.
No, don't go back to his bridge. Don't go back to his bridge.
SEPTA is working to.
All right. Yeah. So SEPTA is going through a lot of issues right now. Not only so we got past the funding issue. Not really. We're gonna see that funding issue happen in 2 years, but we sort of got past that funding issue, and now SEPTA's trains are just catching on fire. They've been doing this for a while now, but it's getting really bad. And SEPTA has actually been trying to replace their trains, but now they're just catching on fire again. So it's to the point where now we have the Surface Transportation Board and the federal government basically being like, you need to figure this out. And so a lot of SEPTA trains, a lot of the regional rail trains have been essentially put out for maintenance and put out to be inspected, which is leading to a shortage in equipment for SEPTA. And obviously this is not good because the whole thing that we had last month was the fact that they just didn't have any funding. So with what money are they going to inspect these trains? You know what I'm saying? I'm sure these inspections are going to be really good now that they're stringing along on a slice of loaf budget. I'm sure this is going to be great. But yeah, let's go check this out.
To address fire risk concerns on its rail car fleet. That work means regional rail riders should prepare for delays and cancellations over at least the next week. Action News reporter Becca Hendrickson is live at the Overbrook station with more on how all of this is impacting commuters. Becca.
Sarah, longer wait times and more overcrowded trains for commuters. I want to show you one that just pulled into the station here. It's only 2 cars. Normally there's about 6 of them. The good news for riders, though, today has been marginally better than yesterday. 55 cancellations yesterday because of these issues. So far, only 12 cancellations on regional rail today.
So we went from 55 to 12. That's pretty good. No, it's not. It's not good. That's not good at all. Like, all right, so it really seems like the issue right now. Again, we need it's exactly what I was talking about with Atlanta. Public transportation needs to be reliable, right? So if it gets canceled, then that's not good. So people are just gonna stop taking it. So here we go with the cancellations and all that type of stuff again, because SEPTA is really, really struggling with money. They are now dipping into their capital funds, which is not good because guess what those capital funds are for? Hey, replacing their aging fleet. So now SEPTA is using their capital funds to replace their aging fleet just to simply maintain operation. So that means their aging fleet that's catching on fire is going to continue to be running. So it's like, oh man, Pennsylvania, man.
As regional rail trains rumble through the Overbrook station, Kenya Kirby hopes one will stop for her.
The one that did pass us was only 2 cars. It was too full, so it couldn't take us.
Monday, she waited over an hour for her ride to work before giving up.
It never came. I had to leave.
SEPTA says everyone should expect delays on regional rail as it works to comply with strict emergency repair and inspection orders by the Federal Railroad Agency. This after the NTSB issued a report last week saying the Silverliner 4 cars, which makes up 2/3 of the regional rail fleet, are unsafe and a fire risk.
You never know what's going to happen. You see rails to rail, you see things blow up, and it's like, this could be me, and I might not be able to get out on time.
There have been 5 fires on regional rail trains.
Oh yeah, well, you know, Epic Snake, at least you weren't on this train. Because yeah, no, this is an issue, and this has been an issue with SEPTA for a while now. SEPTA trains catching on fire is just, you know, it's a thing. And it's because, you know, they need to replace their aging fleet. But unfortunately, now that they're dipping into their capital funds, that's not going to be happening anytime soon. So, yeah. I wonder if any of Amtrak's AEM-7s in the scrapyards could be used. I think, well, because not only would they need, well, I guess they still would need cars though. They would still need you know, actual like train cars, like the coaches themselves. Even if they would have pulled those AEM-7s out, and I think, yeah, even if they were gonna pull those AEM-7s out, I think there would still, like, one, you would have to get back into like actually repairing a lot of them. I doubt that. I'd say like probably like less than 30% are actually in a usable state right now. You know, and so I think it will still be a huge investment of that alone. And they still need the cars, right? They still need the coaches, which I think overall across the U.S. there's an equipment shortage when it comes to coaches. So that's not good. But I think when it comes down to, let's say like the, what else? Let's say like locomotives and like motive power. Yeah, no, it's not looking good for them. It's just, I'm trying to figure out a way that they can get around this other than, you know, just fixing their equipment, and it's just like, it's not good. I think the best outcome for them, the best outcome for SEPTA right now is okay, so it's for other transit agencies to pass down their aging equipment. So let's say for Amtrak, right? Amtrak would pass down their ACS 64s after they get the Aero train sets in 2027, 2028. So they can pass down their ACS 64s to SEPTA. And then for the actual coaches, like the train cars themselves, who's getting rid of train cars? I'm trying to think right now. But like similar coaches. I guess those can. I don't know if Metro North is going to replace their shoreliners with new ones, but hopefully they are. So maybe if they replace some of their shoreliners, I know they've replaced or they're currently replacing some of their Genesis locomotives with Siemens Chargers. So hopefully there's like a something happens there. That's the only way I'm trying to strategize. But that's CT Rail is replacing their cars too. But isn't CT Rail's cars are extremely old though? Like already they're on like their like last legs pretty much as well. I'm trying to think like the shoreliners are on their last legs too, but they're closer maintenance wise to what SEPTA already operates.
Since February, starting with this one in Ridley Park. More than 300 people were on board when the train caught fire. It led to the NTSB investigation into the Silverliner 4 cars, which are more than 50 years old. SEPTA says they're past due to be replaced, but claims they don't have the money to do so.
That's really irritating because a lot of people are trying to get to work at a certain time.
Today, 156 out of 225 Silverliner 4 cars are in the shop being repaired and inspected. For commuters, that means shorter trains, sometimes 2 cars instead of 6 like this one, and more crowded cabins.
The trains are really crowded. Like sometimes people are standing in like the middle of the aisles, and like sometimes it's hard to find seating, and it does get crazy at times.
And you can see this train going into Center City also only has 2 cars. We did check, it ran pretty much on time. SEPTA does say, though, regional rail riders expect these delays and cancellations for at least another week.
I wonder what's gonna, because I don't, like the Horizon cars for Amtrak are going through something too. But I haven't seen much news on the Horizon cars and what's going on with them. Saw a lot of them in in the beach shops. Seen a lot of them over there, but I don't know what's going on with them over there. But anyways, let's see.
They hope by then
Let's
that
go
they'll
to
have
the
a
next
better grip
story.
on the fleet and the repairs all of the cars need. Live here in Overbrook, Becca Hendrickson, Channel 6 Action.
All right, thank you, Becca. All right, so now we're going over to New Jersey Transit. Actually, we're not moving that far, actually. So we're going over to the River Line for New Jersey Transit. New Jersey Transit is now officially taking over operations of the River Line. They're taking over operations from Alstom because Alstom has been struggling to operate the line itself. So this is kind of like a rare W, I guess. Maybe, I don't know. Let's see. This is kind of like a question mark.
Well, there's a light rail service lagging behind the others.
But NJ Transit is promising change now that it has control of that line. In today's Total Commuting, News 12 New Jersey's Tom Krasnowski reports on what it means for riders.
Even in the middle of the afternoon on a weekday, the River Line in Trenton is well attended. This is the only spot for folks here by rail to head further south in New Jersey. The service has been plagued by problems, and it's why New Jersey Transit is pledging to fix them. The corporation announced earlier this month that it will take over operations of the River Line from Alstom, a contractor that also supplies New Jersey Transit's rail cars. A joint statement from both agencies called it a mutually agreed decision, as the River Line's needs have grown beyond Alstom's contract. New Jersey Transit had paid Alstom more than $25 million annually to operate the line, to mixed reviews.
Sometimes they leave early, then they stay. Sometimes they leave late, then sometimes they don't come at all.
Kareem Franklin rides the light rail every day from Willingboro to Trenton and then continues to New Brunswick to get to work.
We need these services.
New Jersey Transit data shows the River Line had by far the lowest on-time percentage of the agency's 3 light rail lines in July. Since 2024, its rail cars are averaging fewer than 5,000 miles between failures. Again, lower than...
Yeah, that's not good. But then also, all right, let me see this thing again.
Its rail cars are averaging fewer than 5,000.
All right, okay. But to be fair, right, when you're looking at the River Line, right, and you're looking at the rest of these light rail lines, right, which one is this one? So this is Hudson Bergen, and this is Newark. I don't know why Newark is so bad. Why is Newark all the way down here between failures? I don't know why that's so low, because the Newark light rail line is really short, so I don't understand why this is such like a. Oh wait, is it because the line is short that there's so many failures before? Nah, actually, this doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why it's this short. The light rail line is, partially in a tunnel for one point, and then it's like then it goes outside of Newark. It's like in its own right of way. Not really sure why the failures are so low on this. And don't they share like similar vehicles between the Hudson Bergen light rail and the Newark light rail? They share like similar vehicles. So I don't know why that's an issue. But yeah, Newark is just cursed. Yeah, probably. But yeah, no, shout out to Hudson Bergen light rail, because this is actually really good. This is good maintenance. Honestly, this is just good maintenance. It probably just had to do with like budgets, the difference between budgets, and when you look at the River Line, thing about the River Line, they consider it light rail. It runs technically as light rail, or it is. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, because the River Line is it's basically a DMU. It's a DMU train set, so it's not. It runs as light rail when it's in Camden, but then kind of just like, and then in other parts as well in New Jersey, but not really. It's really just kind of like a I don't know. It's like one of those mixes between like a light rail and a regional rail. It's like between it's like an interurban. That's basically what it is. So it's like, it's not really to put it up against the Newark light rail and put it up against the Hudson Bergen light rail. It's not really the same thing. So it's kind of unfair to compare the two.
Between failures, again, lower than the other two lines. Trenton is one of the River Line's anchor cities. Its mayor supports the move.
Chris Calorio at New Jersey Transit made the right decision to absorb the River Line directly and to put the full weight of New Jersey Transit behind this. And as more development is occurring along the River Line.
And this is actually really smart, because they could have said like, hey, let's hand this over to another private operator, but New Jersey Transit was like, no, let's operate it ourselves, which means that you're kind of cutting out that middleman, which means that they're actually serious about making investment. So typically when a transit agency takes direct operations over a rail line, that means that they're ready to be serious about it, because they know if they mess up, then the only person that they can point at is themselves. Oftentimes when there is a private company that's operating the transit for the transit agency, then they start doing this pointing back and forth Spider-Man meme, where it's just like, like where they start blaming each other for the problems, like MBTA and their commuter rail, And so I think that New Jersey Transit taking over the actual the full light rail line, or interurban, whatever we want to call this, is good, because now they're actually fully taking responsibility, So which means that we can probably get some actual investment, even though New Jersey Transit is looking at a $1 billion deficit. So for the next year, so we don't. This can either go really good or really bad, because New Jersey Transit is about to turn into SEPTA in a year or two. So.
New Jersey Transit behind this. And as more development is occurring along the River Line, which is a good thing for New Jersey, really need to have reliable transportation.
The 34-mile River Line could be bolstered by the planned Glassboro-Camden Line project further south. Before that, riders will be watching close.
That should be interesting too. I should probably make a video about that eventually. That's like eventually make a video about that. But especially once the project starts moving a little bit more, then it would be nice to make a video about it. All right, let's go on to our last story, which is actually checking up on the video I made, where the Metro North Viaduct is the Metro North Viaduct is reached a new milestone. So let's go into this real quick. And then also this will kind of show you some stuff that I couldn't really show you on ground when I was making the video.
Construction sites along the tracks require a lot of work, planning, and often service delays. Trains and work crews have to coordinate. Riders deal with detour. But the big yellow machines on wheels along the Park Avenue Viaduct in East Harlem are transforming the track structure without interrupting Metro North service.
It's better because it's less inconvenient to the passengers.
Passengers might not even know the 130-year-old track and elevated steel structure has been rebuilt overnight and weekend work since 2023. Phase 1 now complete.
We said to the contracting community, give us your best ideas.
MTA Chairman Janno Lieber was on the job site Monday. He says working with a contractor that designs and builds the project has made it more efficient. Watch this MTA video. The contractor proposed using the rolling machines that install prefabricated bridge sections and track bed. The replacement work is done with less disruption.
A lot of things that they're doing is improvement. But sometimes a lot of things you gotta have patience.
But some big MTA projects are facing possible delays due to federal involvement. The federal government shutdown has frozen some funding of the 2nd Avenue subway. Work is continuing for now.
It's not a mystery. New York's getting picked on. What we're saying is, like, we're hoping and expecting that rationality will prevail when the shutdown is resolved, however it is.
A larger delay is already changing the timeline to connect Penn Station with 4 new Metro North stations in the Bronx. It will be later in 2028 at least, the MTA says, due to problems with Amtrak, which owns the tracks.
Amtrak slows down on its own. They don't need any direction from Congress. They don't need Duffy to say anything. They slow us down every day of the week.
Amtrak is a federal...
Wow. Okay, so... For those of you who don't know, Amtrak, did I talk about this in one of my videos? Can't remember if I talked about this in the Acela video or what. But yeah, no, Amtrak pretty much beefs with any transit agency along the way, which is, again, a major issue when it comes to public transportation in the U.S. Why is Amtrak, the National Railroad company, beefing with local transit agencies? You know, why is it so hard for them to work together? This is why you constantly see projects, particularly along the Northeast Corridor, not so much in other parts of the country, but along the Northeast Corridor. Well, yeah, because Amtrak owns the Northeast Corridor for the most part. You see it change ownership multiple times. So whenever there's it's because of money. Yeah, exactly. It's because, honestly, the reality of it is both of them lack funding, right? And so both of them squabble over what little funding there is, instead of actually working together to, like, you know, which is the bad part, right? Because it's like, for example, if you're both struggling, what use is it to spend what little funding you have to go at each other's necks? You know what I'm saying? That's where it's like, you know, that's the struggle right there. It's because they do lack funding. Yeah, you're right. And because they lack funding, now it's like, okay, well, we have to find somebody to blame for our issues. When the reality is, like, you just lack funding. You know, both of you should be getting more federal money, right? The MTA and New York, the metro areas, does spend a lot of spends a lot of federal taxes, right? Makes up for a lot of federal taxes, right? And that money doesn't come back to New York. And so that's the issue. Same thing with California. California has to be real. You know, like, a lot of this, California spends a lot of, or makes the federal government a lot of money in taxes. And then they don't get any of that money back. That's an issue, you know? Because then you have to question where that money is actually going. And Amtrak is a literal federal company. It's a federal company. It's owned by the federal government, and still it's the same type of issue where it's like, for some reason, the federal government doesn't want to invest money into their own company, you know? It's allergic to the idea. It does it, but, you know, it's like pulling teeth. So that's been an issue. And so that's why, depending on what administration is in office, it changes the way that Amtrak acts, obviously. And it also changes the way that these transit agencies respond to Amtrak. So,
Duffy to say anything. They slow us down every day of the week.
Amtrak is a federal corporation. While they didn't respond to my most recent request about this most recent delay in the past, Amtrak has said they have worked with the MTA and will continue to do so on right-of-way and weekend outages.
Yeah, Amtrak is also one of the main issues where Lieber is talking about is Amtrak has struggled to adjust their schedules for the MTA, and so Amtrak will essentially, like, even though there's work being done on the corridor that can benefit the both of them, Amtrak will refuse to adjust their schedules and will basically say, like, no, MTA, you adjust your schedules, you know? And so we saw that with the East Side Access Project with the LIRR, saw that with the Herald Interlocking, and now we're seeing that with Penn Access. So it's always something with the MTA and Amtrak, I think, and obviously when it comes down to the Northeast Corridor is a real big issue. When it comes down to like the Empire Corridor, which is a state-owned corridor, not state-owned corridor, but state-owned service, that service is operated by Amtrak, but funded by the state. Amtrak is more than happy to like let up service, you know? So it's kind of weird. Not weird, it makes sense, but in reality, if Amtrak was really upset about just letting go service altogether, then they should probably be upset about both, but they're not. It's really just the Northeast Corridor because they know the Northeast Corridor is their breadwinner. So far, Amtrak trains has speed restrictions on the Hellgate Bridge for Penn Access. Yeah, and yeah, because there's work being done, and Amtrak is being impacted by it negatively right now. But it's kind of like the one case where Amtrak is like starting to turn into a NIMBY, or they have been acting like NIMBYs, right? Which is annoying. But obviously, it's annoying. Because in Amtrak's mind, it's like we're already struggling for funding. And again, like I said, what the theme for, I guess, today's stream is reliability. Like, people only use public transportation when it's reliable. And so when Amtrak, you know, has to face reliability issues on the Northeast Corridor, which is supposed to be the most reliable corridor for Amtrak, where Amtrak makes its most money, of course they're going to be extremely upset about it, you know, like a honey badger, and they just start attacking everybody. And so, you know, there's ways you just kind of have to like handle, or the MTA has to handle Amtrak with gloves, like safety gloves, so like, you know, they don't get scratched. But you know, Amtrak, you know, Amtrak is struggling with the what's it called too? The East River tunnels as well. So Amtrak has also been really difficult about the East River tunnels as well. And so it's always something. And again, like I understand all point of views, honestly, but Amtrak attacking local transit agencies is not going to help, like, at all, you know? So yeah. Anyways, though, that's the stream. That's my last story. Got through 7 good stories, actually. One of them, the bridge, was a random one. But anyways, W stream, everybody. I'll see you guys next week. I'm trying to I'm like a week behind. About a week behind on. Yeah, Epic Snake, you can send me something. Yeah, just, you know, I think you have my email. Yeah. So I think I'm about a week behind on the main channel. I'm about a week behind on this channel, honestly, too. But you know, yeah, schools, you know. And but yeah, I'm about to get back on back on the grind again, so I can get the main channel back up to where it needs to be at. I have just for the 20 people in here, so you guys can know exactly what the next videos for the main channel will be. Main channel, the next video will be another UK video. Then it's a Northeast Regional video. It's the first episode for the Northeast Regional, the truth about the Northeast Regional, and that will be, I'm pretty sure I'm starting in Norfolk. And that's like Norfolk to Richmond. So we're gonna start in Virginia, and then I have another UK video, and then after that, then I have the New River Valley expansion. So we're gonna be going back to we're gonna be staying in Virginia. So we're gonna have a lot of Virginia content. But the Northeast Regional series is going to be extremely long. It's going to be extremely long. Might take like 2 years to cover the entire thing, but I want it to be as detailed as possible. And the Northeast Regional is an extremely large and spread out and important service, not only for Amtrak, but for the Northeast economy as a whole. So that's going to be interesting. I'm going to try to bring on a lot of new guests and stuff. So, yeah. All right. And also, Epic Snake, I got your email. All right. But anyways, W Stream, everybody. I'll see